Hello and welcome to Kafka-Nated, the show where we explore the fascinating world of Apache Kafka, from architectural deep dives to the people who make it all happen. I'm Hugh, your host, and I'm excited to be back with you for another episode. Today, I'm joined by Viktor Kessler, co-founder of Vakamo, major contributor to Lakekeeper, and organizer of the European Apache Iceberg Meetup. Welcome to the show, Viktor.
Thank you. Hello, Hugh, and thank you for having me here. I'm glad to be here.
It's great to have you here. So, first things first, you have a long history with the Iceberg project, and as we'll kind of get into in the show today, you have a very kind of broad set of involvements with it. How did you first get involved with the Apache Iceberg project?
You know, like a fairy tale, long time ago. Probably starting with that, yeah. So I actually was at that time at a company named Dremio. So some of you probably know that company, and Dremio was actually in a kind of a very interesting spot at that time, especially as someone who was involved in project like Apache Arrow, Apache Parquet. And Dremio was involved in Apache Iceberg as well, and especially probably some of you know Project Nessie. That is kind of like a catalog for Iceberg, and that was my involvement in that topic, especially since I was as a solutions architect at Dremio. I got the whole feedback from the customers, and who told me like, yeah, Parquet is nice, and we can do like store petabytes of data, but especially here in Europe, we have GDPR. We need to change data. We need to remove a customer. So how are we going to do that? And then thanks to Iceberg, we got a solution. So that's how I got into that project. Yeah.
And for listeners who might be hearing about Iceberg for the first time, like, how would you explain what Iceberg is and why it's had such like a huge impact on the data ecosystem in recent years?
Well, we probably have not really enough time to go through all the explanation what Iceberg is, because Iceberg is huge. That's something what I can tell you. And it depends like who is listening, what type of a role we have here. So from a data engineering standpoint, I can tell you that Iceberg for you is what you know is a database table without a database. Probably like put it that way. So you can now just do with whatever you know with your SQL script and just manipulate your data, analyze your data, but there is no database behind that. That is simple object storage where data is stored. For maybe a data architect, it's quite interesting. Is the explanation is Iceberg might be the last data migration what you have, because if you migrated to Iceberg and the freedom what Iceberg gives you in order in terms of how to store data and how to analyze data, you probably don't need to move anywhere in the next, I don't know, 5 or 10 years. You can just take the new technology. There is no like, okay, let's go from Oracle to Teradata, from Teradata to Snowflake, from Snowflake somewhere else. So you will just move to Iceberg. So that's on the technical side. And maybe just to mention on the business side, what is actually Iceberg? Iceberg is a liberty and democracy and whatever you actually like here. But that's from a business side that you can actually go and do whatever you need to do to accomplish your task. And that is not going to be dictated by technology anymore. So it's not like, oh, in our company, we have this technology, and that's how your business process needs to be aligned. That's time is over. So that's probably the explanation what Iceberg is.
That's a great explanation. I definitely will be stealing the it's a database without the it's just the table without the database part. I think that's probably the most succinct way I've heard it put in quite a while. Getting into kind of the sort of the meat of our conversation today, you're a major contributor to Lakekeeper, which is an open source Iceberg REST catalog. Like, first of all, what is that, and what gap were you trying to fill when you started working on Lakekeeper, and how does that fit into the broader Iceberg ecosystem?
Yeah, it's quite interesting because Lakekeeper was not a target. It was not something what we started with. So when we started Vakamo, we had actually the idea, let's build something for data mesh. Like we had a time where data mesh was really hip. Everyone was talking about the data mesh, and for data mesh, we said like we would love to build something around data products and data contracts, and ensure through some enforcement mechanism that if you use a product that your consumption is not going to break. So that's long story short. That's something what we started, and we understood under the hood to enable the enforcement. We need to go like in a basement and fix the issue. And the solution was Lakehouse based on Apache Iceberg. But at that time, it was quite hard to build the Iceberg because you could actually choose between Tabula as a service, a software which, well, was started by Ryan Blue, an inventor of Iceberg, or you could actually take the Hive Metastore. And Hive Metastore is, as you probably know, well, a little bit outdated software. And in order to solve this challenge and to have more control, we said like, okay, let's build a catalog. It cannot be that difficult, right? It's just a couple of REST endpoints. Yeah, totally underestimated the effort. And so we started to build a Lakekeeper for us, playing around, see like what's going on. And then somewhere in 24, we open sourced that project. And right now, what you can do, you can use a Lakekeeper as full compatible Iceberg REST catalog. And from a philosophy, what we actually have chosen on our end is not to lock you in. So the idea is like if you will use the Iceberg REST catalog, you will stay open on storage, you will stay open on compute, and you will stay open on governance. But maybe later more to that.
Definitely. I like that as like the origin of many an open source project, perhaps, of going like, oh, how hard can it be to build X technology to solve Y problem? And that's like, oh, quite hard. On that note, like, what were some of the most interesting technical challenges you've encountered whilst working on Iceberg REST catalogs?
Well, you know, like on our end, because we made a decision to write the whole solution in Rust, we understood that Rust is not that well supported, at least at that time when we started to build the catalog. So that was a challenge to go through that process. And for us, well, the bureaucratic process of open source foundation is quite interesting to understand, you know, like, and it feels so familiar because I am from Europe, and if you know what Brussels and EU Parliament is, and you don't know that anymore. On our end, we do know, and it was sometimes kind of a feeling like, oh, I'm back home somehow on that project. But yeah, that's kind of a funny story. But you know, like from a technical perspective, is the quite interesting thing was so how to build something what can remain open in terms of how customer will deploy that. So we're not going to build, let's say, the authorization inside of our solution that will lock someone, but still give you a possibility to say like, okay, you have a solution for authorization, but our company uses something very exotic. Let's call it RUCF, mainframe-based thing, and how we can actually integrate that. And it was our focus to provide you a very modular and extendable solution. So Lakekeeper itself runs as you need it, but if you want to extend it, it's super easy to do. That's probably the main part.
That's super cool. On that point around like integration and having like a modular system, 2025 has seen a lot of talk about discuss topics in the world that I inhabit with talking about Kafka. But what are your thoughts on the relationship between Kafka and Iceberg, and perhaps on some of these efforts to directly integrate the two with projects like Iceberg Topics or Flus or the stuff that the team at Streambased are doing?
Yeah, you know, like the origin, like to be completely transparent to everyone who is listening, origin of Iceberg is batch. It's not streaming, and the main idea was like, okay, how can company like Netflix that actually exceed 1 exabyte of warehouse to manage the whole stuff of that new per key files, and that was the main goal of Iceberg at the beginning, 2017. And I would say they really created a cool story, cool solution, cool foundation, because you know, like what is Iceberg? Iceberg is just for specification, that right? So, and that's exactly what we have here for the batch. But what actually happened, because Iceberg became a foundational data layer, companies and like communities started to ask like, oh, can we actually go and implement streaming in that? And fortunately for Iceberg, we had a good examples on Delta and Hoodie, where we can actually see like, okay, we have already a solution on a different way. So let's think about that, how to extend Iceberg. And I think that year 26 is exactly the year of streaming for Iceberg, and probably 27 as well, when we're going to add like even more additional features for that. But like looking at Iceberg and now Kafka and then Flink and Fluss, it looks like there is a lot of synergies, and I do have permanent conversations with guys from Flink and with Kafka, and I see that everyone tries now to get to the point at least to fulfill like 80% what streaming requires. And you can actually see like, okay, so if I have a streaming and a simple attach mode, so it's like kind of IoT technology that streams the data, it's quite easy today just to go and stream that with Flink and then run a compaction on top of Iceberg. Well, on CDC, it's tricky. But it's quite interesting because we do have like all the different approaches what CDC actually requires, and sometimes you can go like classic with Kafka and Flink. Sometimes maybe you can even think about why not to use like PG Lake that might be even sync automatically out of your Postgres table to Iceberg, right? So there are different ways to solve it, and we will see. But I'm pretty sure about the bright future between Iceberg, Kafka, Fluss, Flink.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that like thinking about how do you go from streamed messages to batch, and whether that goes through compaction or like native writes or whatever, is like a very interesting problem. And definitely, I think if 2025 was the year of talking about like diskless Kafka, I think 2026 and into 2027, as you say, I think we'll probably be hearing a lot about the overlap of streaming and Iceberg. One thing I definitely want to touch on that you mentioned before is the importance of open governance to you and the work that you and your team do together. You co-founded Vakamo like on governance for Iceberg, so clearly it's very important to you. What made you decide to build a company around this particular aspect of the technology?
Yeah, from my experience working in big enterprises and startups, I can tell you that the thing is, if you look like 10 or 20 years before that, so we had like a nice monolith where you could actually put everything in that single box, regardless it's Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, and that box could actually solve like 80-90% of all requirements inside of the companies. And at the same time, from a business side, no one was talking about data drivenness. No one was talking about like, oh, I want to just have agentic systems deciding on top of my data. So that was like back in the days. Right now, we started actually to decompose the monolith. And what we started with is to take out the storage. It's how we created S3. And now you have like, well, let's call it infinite way to store the data. I would say like if you can store like exabytes of data inside of S3, it's kind of like infinite way. So that was like step number one. Step number two was quite interesting. You can say like exactly the Kafka is the lock or uplock of a database, and that's exactly how like the community started to think about how to solve that bottleneck of a database, and it's why we got Kafka. And I think Jay Krebs was thinking about from that perspective, just to solve the problem, how to use the lock of a database and distribute the whole stuff. At the same time, probably we've got all that massive parallel processing on compute side, which is part of the database as well. And we've got Starburst with Trino, we've got Dremio, we've got Impala, we've got now DuckDB, ClickHouse. It's a very long list of different compute, but they were able to solve the compute and query engine side, and it was now open. So taking that monolith, storage is open and distributable, and you can do with that all the different stuff. Save streaming now through Kafka, Flink, all the different instruments. Same with compute. But then the last thing what was actually missing is what we call right now a control plane. So a control plane that is in charge of life cycle of your tables, which is in control of your access governance, which is in control of all the different processes around your system. And our idea was like, okay, so we have exactly the path from a past, from every technology, how to go further. So we said like, oh, that's probably exactly what we need to do. And the main idea was again from data product, data contract side, and it's still somewhere on a roadmap. But that is kind of like the beginning of Vakamo. So let's build a company that is able to provide a solution for a governance and control on the Lakehouse without locking. Probably like that.
Amazing. So yeah, I guess my understanding is, you're coming through this historic like decomposition of like the data storage layer that we've had, from monoliths through the Hadoop era through to now, and it's like finding that missing piece of the puzzle that gives you the complete open stack.
Correct. And maybe there is a, like always when you look at the decomposing of monolith, what we actually had. So we had that single box and monolith. Then someone came to a great idea. Oh, let's put a couple of monoliths together and call it a massive parallel processing. The next revolution was, oh, let's just get compute and storage just in two different layers, and then we can actually scale them independently. The next person was like, why not to get data actually independent in form of Parquet, so I can just move it in a place where we want it. And today, if you look at that stack, the last piece, maybe not last, but from my understanding, is kind of like the last missing piece is, it's not about the data, it's about the metadata. And I'm not talking about describing what customer is. I'm talking about the technical metadata, what you see inside of a table, how a table is structured, how data is structured. And the situation is around this technical metadata is that it was quite on a backstage. Like data was on the main stage, everyone was taking care about the data because, like customer was on the website, let's send a voucher to the customer, let's call the customer, let's make something around that situation. So we have all that eventing, and then Kafka is in that place as well. But now where everyone was at the same time kind of complaining, oh, quality is not good, or well, we're not sure about the statistics about that data, or the best one is the ownership, like, oh, who's owner of that table? The John. Oh, let's go to the John because we want to make changes. Where's John? Well, John left company for 2 years, and that's kind of like a situation where we live. So which means now we have that metadata, and the idea is actually of Vakamo and Lakekeeper as well, is that this metadata needs to be on the main stage with data and be exactly same actionable as data, which means, okay, someone left the company, so why my system is not connecting to IDP, knows that user was deactivated, and it needs somehow to tell, hey, you got to take care of that table, right? So there is no owner anymore, and all that different stuff about the quality. So you don't need, with Iceberg especially, you don't need to load the data directly in a main branch of a table. So Iceberg, guys, has a branching concept. You can actually load that in a separate branch, run your checks, your Monte Carlo, Anomaly, whatever you use in your company, and then fast forward and merge that in the main branch after the check. So that's kind of the way how you can actually do this stuff. And again, metadata is exactly the thing what I believe is going to be a very interesting, and especially we haven't touched the AI world, but the metadata and context, they're very close to each other, and it's going to be very interesting how that's going to evolve. So MCPs, A to A, that's all about the metadata.
Definitely. Yeah, I think that governance piece only gets more and more important, obviously at scale, but when you're bringing in all of these systems that act quickly, like being able to control the scope of things that they see, being able to redact PII, being able to identify PII is like going to be hugely important.
Yeah, and that's all connected to streaming, like, because I think we will have more and more kind of moving parts, moving data, moving metadata, and then quite interesting how that hook with Kafka, which loads data in a topic from topic to Iceberg, and then understands, like, okay, from a governance perspective, I can do that right now, and so on, right?
One question I had in, obviously at Vakamo, you're building Lakekeeper, and you have this like this awesome open source, like REST governance tool catalog. Like, how do you balance your time between contributing to open source and like building a kind of commercial product and a business? And do these roles ever come into conflict, or do you find that they complement each other?
Well, it's quite interesting question. Like in 1 year you have 8,760 hours, and then you can balance it, and there's something what can be done differently, right? So, but if you will look at my day, you will probably find me never on Netflix or something like that. So I'm just trying to put my time on doing stuff. And that's probably the only one thing. So you make a priority on doing stuff, and still the thing is, because it's not maybe at the beginning it was kind of from a feeling in a void, but right now, because we have a very great community around that topic, Iceberg, now I see that is getting back to me, and that's actually what motivates, just to make the understanding, like, okay, what I am doing right now, this is that part for the open source, or is that part for the customer, which is exactly important, because the customer who is going to use that solution requires something different, which is not very, very interesting for the community. So it shouldn't be inside of open source. Yeah,
it's interesting. Like, definitely very interested to touch on community, as like I think we're talking about, with your bias to action, and you spending time working on open source and time running your business. Another thing that you're spending a lot of your time doing is running the European Iceberg community. So I'd love to pick your brains about that. But first, I wanted to ask you a little bit about, so we got Community Over Code coming up in Glasgow later this year, and you're involved in organizing that as well. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. Like probably it's kind of connected to your question before. It shows like I'm probably bored sometimes, and then I'm getting ideas. And my idea was like, oh, we have Iceberg Summit in US, and then I was reaching out to JB, to Danica from Snowflake, and like, why nothing here in Europe? And we started to think about that, how to organize that summit. And the solution came actually like to a result, because we have Community Over Code in October in Glasgow. So why not start with a special Lakehouse day? And that is a kind of a result, like, so like getting ideas, talking to people, and that's the result of that we now have this specific day. So everyone, guys, who's listening, if you want to learn more about, it's not just about Iceberg, it's going to be like Open Lakehouse Day. You want to learn about like what's happening around data and metadata. So you got to be there, or you can even propose a talk. So if you want to talk about Kafka, Flink, Iceberg, whatever is like connected to data, Arrow, please apply and submit to the talk.
Brilliant stuff. And if you're watching the recording at home, you should be able to find a link to Community Over Code in the description. So coming on to your work in the community space, which I've seen firsthand how like awesome some of those events have been. You organize Apache Iceberg, the Meetup Europe, and you've hosted events across like Dublin, Vilnius, Germany also. Were you in Paris recently too? All over Europe. What motivated you to take on the community organizer role alongside your technical and business work? And just as an aside from me, as someone who organizes community in the UK, what was the how do you find the time to run events all over Europe in this way at that kind of scale?
Yeah, so it's quite interesting question, because to be honest, I need to make kind of to happen a review for 2025 to answer completely a question, but maybe like to answer that on spontaneously. Well, the first thing is I'm probably, because I'm quite lazy, and in order to get any Iceberg information in 2024, you actually needed to fly over to San Francisco, and you can imagine that the flight with 13 hours, with jet lag, with customs, and with it was very, very tedious thing just to do something like that. So even to visit a single meetup, you knocked out for 2 weeks. So right, and that was kind of like the initial spark where I and my co-founder Christian said, well, we should just do something about that. So why nothing in Europe? So how is it possible? And at that time we had like some events in US, in Israel, in China, in Asia, but nothing in Europe. And we came to conclusion. So we gotta build something around here. But what we said at the beginning, so let's not build a meetup in Germany or in France, like, so let's think about like a bigger. And it's how we came to that part, so to build that in whole Europe. And the good thing is, maybe just to speak some compliments to everyone who sponsored and who is about to sponsor, like Avon, that we do have a quite positive feedback and like support from all companies. It's not just like that kind of like on the open source communities getting together. We get sponsorship from Databricks, Snowflake, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Enterprise DB, all the different companies. And I see even more and more kind of requests. Like recently we had with Cloudera, with Dremio, with Starburst, upcoming is Avon. And the cool part is that what I see is right now is that companies starting to organize that. So right now I have a couple of preparations. So one is going to be in Barcelona with Cantox, is a subsidiary from BNP Paribas, I guess. And then we do have a plan to have some German companies as well, some Swedish companies, and that's kind of cool. So, but back to your question, how to manage that. So it's probably hard the first 5 times to get to that routine, but afterwards you have a routine, and if you follow the routine and you have like all your instruments, it's quite easy. But still you need to invest time. There is no AI agent who is going to fly over to Paris and do the whole stuff and organize the whole stuff. But yes, by the way, what we look around for that community, and it started to again to thrive, that we now starting to create a local hubs. So right now we have a conversation with Anton from Fresha, who is willing just to create a local hub for London under the Apache Iceberg Europe. So he's going to, I don't know, like maybe run that every quarter. But that will give you like a stability, exactly, okay, Fresha office is Iceberg Meetup, and everyone can just join and have a conversation. And I'm happy to do something similar in Germany, France, Spain, or like whatever places company wanna do that, just to give like a possibility to the European community to get together and think about like, okay, so how we can actually use it.
I'm a really big fan of the data engineering meetups that Fresh do. So very exciting to hear that you and Anton are collaborating there. That should be super cool. What have you learned about the Iceberg community through organizing these meetups? I guess about the European Iceberg community, now that you've helped sort of cultivate that on this side of the Atlantic. Are there like common themes or challenges that often come up with audiences and speakers?
Yeah. So first of all, what I learned, and it was hidden for me, and I guess hidden for a lot of people as well, that Apache community, the global one, is it has a lot of European contributors. Like if you look at the Apache project, you will see, oh, okay, we have Databricks and Snowflake and Amazon, all that global US companies. But if you look at the PMCs and if you look at the contribution, you will find a huge footprint from Europeans. And that's something what we definitely need to use and actually to be proud of, that it's not just made by America, by US, it's made by Europeans as well. So we have a huge influence on that as well. So that's kind of a kudos to everyone who is contributing to Iceberg, guys. And the second thing probably just to mention is that there is a huge interest about this technology inside of Europe. So it's why we're getting like sometimes over 100 people in a room. Sometimes we get like 30 or 40 people that as well. But like it doesn't really matter where I'm flying. Sometimes we have a very funny story. I got like, oh, I was on vacation with my family. That was, I think, in Budapest. And then I saw you run the Iceberg Meetup, and I was talking to my wife that, can I go like for a couple of hours to that event? And like, So just to show like the motivation and inspiration of people inside of
amazing.
Europe. That yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, kids, I'm at the Iceberg Meetup. Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, next time kids can just join as well. We
Of
need,
course,
need
yeah.
to take Lego or something like that. So
There's lots of good mascots to color in, I think, for companies in the data space.
yeah,
Maybe an opportunity there.
Stickers, like.
Oh god, yeah, we've certainly had that before. Yeah, it's just super exciting seeing everything that's happening with the community now, and yeah, I think coming to that first Iceberg meetup in the Microsoft offices in London was just like super exciting, seeing engineers and people in the community like building stuff. I think particularly after FOSDEM a couple of weeks ago too, it's just yeah, very encouraging to see all the cool things the European open source development community are working on.
Yeah, and like if you look at the current situation, that's all about the sovereignty, and that is exactly what I would say in a positive way, that what we actually trying to avoid is lock into something single thing. And I truly don't believe that we will get a singularity in a data world. So at least maybe AI will cause something like that, but we will get to that different ways where we have Kafka Flink for streaming, and then we have still Spark, and we have Data Fusion and Trino, and I don't know, Snowflake and Databricks, and it's going to be very heterogeneous. And that's from my belief that why we need open standards, and we need more standards on that one. So to achieve exactly that part, and I think here Europeans can actually now go forward and create more and more standards around this. And my thing is right now is just to think about how to create the standards more for governance. It's why we focusing on OpenFGA, CEDA policies, Open Policy Agent, and just trying to provide a solution here. Yeah.
Looking forward to the future of, and I would say seemingly the bright future of the Iceberg project, what are you particularly excited about? Like, what's on the horizon? Are there any features or developments that listeners should keep a keen eye on?
There are multiple things in a discussion. So there are probably two things. So the first one is the file format API. I know like Peter worries on that. So Peter, stay strong and get to it. And to allow Iceberg to get like to other formats like Vortex, Lance, and I don't know like what they're like different formats right now, but that will actually be a very helpful thing, because Iceberg is like a standard layer on top, and then you can just use whatever you need for your specific use case. And I'm very excited. Then that's going to be part of Iceberg. Let's hope 26 or something like that.
An eye to the future on that one.
A what?
I said an eye to the future on that one. We'll see where those come.
Absolutely. And the second thing, what I'm very excited is about like how Iceberg develops towards the governance, especially like the authorization, authentication, that we probably gonna have like UDFs that will help us to have a column masking and row filtering. That we actually thinking about that, how to implement all that stuff, how to use the user delegation from a query engine, that the catalog as a central part can exactly put that and enforce it, because that's the only place, right? So that's the only place where metadata, the actionable metadata stored. And I'm quite excited about this development, and I hope it's going to be faster. But that's kind of like the nature of communities. They take their time to go through a process. Yeah.
I think one thing we've touched on a bit today is like kind of the decomposition of all the different parts of kind of data architectures from monolith into all the services that we have now. Would you perhaps hope that in the future, with better standards, we might see governance become something that's perhaps more unified rather than being as disparate as it currently is? Maybe doing the same kind of things that projects like Flux do on topic and table for governance principles?
And just wait, here's somewhere my crystal ball, and I'll try to look into that. It is super hard to say something about that. So because like the thing is that we will probably get to a standard. The question is, would the big guys support that standard? And that's kind of the only one question. So if I look at the Iceberg right now, I know that I can use, for instance, Trino with Open Policy Agent. I know that Starox supports some sort of user token exchange. Will other companies support that, like Snowflake, Databricks, ClickHouse? You probably need to invite them and ask that question. So it's not up to me to make that decision. I do hope that they will support that one somewhere on a road. So even like a CEDA policy, like CEDA policy was invented, I think, by Amazon, and they offer that service. So maybe we need to talk with Amazon supporting CEDA policies with Iceberg REST catalog with S3. Would be nice to see something like that. Yeah.
Great stuff. Yeah, I think we will have to do that and ask people about what standards they're going to work with.
Yeah, to be honest, like if I look at the Iceberg project, there is one thing which is kind of not inside of Iceberg discussion, and it's semantic layer. And you saw probably the open semantic interchange initiative, and it's quite cool. And that's something what needs to be somehow inside of Iceberg view, and allow to create the business logic in a view, and then every query engine can use it. So that would be awesome just to see this kind of a collaboration between this initiative and Apache Iceberg. Yeah.
Great stuff. We have a couple of audience questions just before we wrap up. One specifically about, in terms of the Iceberg project, like what language is Iceberg written in? Program language, I should say.
Well, Iceberg is a specification. You can go and read the specification, which is written in OpenAPI, whatever language. But the thing is about the Iceberg, there are different implementations. So the most famous one is Iceberg Java, right? So that how Iceberg actually started. And then we've got Iceberg Rust, Iceberg Python. I'm not quite sure about the Python, if it's going to use Rust as well in the future completely. But then there is Iceberg Go and C++, so all that different implementation in Iceberg. And you can actually go, there is a good overview on iceberg.org, which feature is supported where. And you will find out that I think like the number one is Java, then Rust is trying to catch up, and then Go and C++. So you can use all of them, right? So Python as well. If you miss, Apache Iceberg is a open source community, guys. If you want to write something, I don't know, in Elixir, feel free. Yeah, you will probably find someone who is supporting you as well. But yeah.
So yeah, for our question asker in chat, Iceberg is a standard available in all good programming languages, and if it's not in the one you want, then that'd be the change you want to see in the world. I think raise the PR. I have one question.
Not only PR, guys. Contribute to that.
Yeah, go through the proper contributing process and have discussions and participate in the community.
Absolutely.
One more question, which I'll admit is not from the audience, and that I was definitely not put up to by JB Onofre, is obviously Lakekeeper is a very cool project, and we touched a little bit on the Apache project being active in Europe and doing cool stuff. What is behind the decision that you make as a maintainer between like seeking like adoption from a foundation for a project or donating a project versus maintaining it independently? Like what is the balance and the pros and cons between those two things?
Well, it's super hard, to be honestly, to make a decision. Like well, the first thing, we made a decision to make that Apache license, right? So it's open source. Everyone can take it, everyone can fork it. And we know that some companies did it. The only one thing what I'm asking is to acknowledge it if you did it. So be brave and say to the world that we took a technology from like Lakekeeper and from other projects. Do not hide it. But then the next thing is, should we go to a foundation? It's Apache, it's Linux. There are different foundations that can be actually used for that. The thing is, what everyone needs to be aware, it is it's a Brussels. It's additional bureaucratic process what you will put on top of your project. And what I can tell you, you need definitely like a community behind that project at the beginning, because if you like 2, 3, 5 people and you will go to that type of foundation, you will probably stop innovating on your product, and you will be kind of doing some bureaucratic stuff. And that's kind of like the question at the beginning: would you do that or not? And then there are like pros and cons, right? So like if you look at the projects, and I know like sometimes we discussion goes like, oh, if it's under Apache, it's not going to be abandoned or something like that. And like, you sure about this? Should I give you a list of all that projects that not like under maintenance anymore and they're Apache? So it's not a guarantee, right? So in same on our end. So there is no guarantee anywhere, and that's something like what I would love to highlight. Not to have a illusion that if it's under some kind of open source foundation, that is kind of a guarantee. It is not. It is not. And I can tell you from innovation speed, if it's not under the foundation, it's faster because there's someone who is interested to push it up front. And the second thing is actually for me to make a decision if a project should go to a foundation is simple. Is it a foundational project like Apache Iceberg? Is that technology building a foundation like Kubernetes? Or is it like a nice, cool feature tool piece of infrastructure, but it's not foundational yet, at least? If it's on a way to become foundational, yeah, sure, let's go in and put it in a foundation. But that's something what I would see at the moment. So, and therefore, for us, I can tell you that it helps us to make faster decision. We can fail fast, we can break things, but we can recover fast as well. And that was like our decision at the beginning, not to go to foundation, at least yet. But again, guys, it's licensed under Apache. We do not have any plans now to change the license, and we do have a clear messaging about like, okay, well, what is Lakekeeper open source? What is Lakekeeper Plus for enterprises? So it's all clear, and that's kind of like the current state.
That's a great answer, and yeah, thank you for taking the time to walk us through that. I know we've been speaking a lot about governance in the sense of data today, but it's nice also, I think, to give people a bit of perspective into the governance of open source projects, and I think it's not a perspective many people get to have.
Yeah, it's a boring topic, right? So
oh, an important one though.
as always in life, right? So no one takes care about the taxes, but taxes are important, right? So you gotta be careful. And same as here, it's kind of fun to go outside and spend money, but then at the end of the year, you need to go and make your tax kind of like report. And same with the governance. I from my understanding, no one is really taking care at the beginning, like, oh, cool, nice tool, let's just start and do a POC, and then go to your manager and say like, oh, I have now 10 petabytes of data and I did it like that and everything is flying. And the poor manager now goes to CISO and is going to be lynched on the CISO, like, the whole world can read our 10 petabytes of data. What did you do?
Oh, that's too real. That's really good.
Yeah, and then like if you kind of company publicly traded, that you got to be careful about that stuff. So it's not fun, and that can cause a huge problem. So therefore, my message, guys, yes, fun is cool, but think about the governance stuff and scaling stuff. So if you run your MVP, it's not 10 gigabyte of data in the future in the production, it's way more. So probably you need to run a last test, like performance test as well inside of your MVP, not just everything is doing good on a single small, I don't know, T2 micro node. I'm like, well, be careful.
It's great advice, yeah. Test, and you'll find sometimes it's faster to go slow. That leaves me with one final question before we wrap up. Where can people find you online? Where can they learn more about Vakamo and Lakekeeper? And maybe where can they get involved in Apache Iceberg meetups in Europe?
Yeah, it's simple, guys. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. If you want to test Lakekeeper, there is a GitHub repo with Helm chart, with everything, so super easy just to try it out. If you want to be part of a community, we have a Discord for Lakekeeper, so just join the community, have a discussion. And regarding the Iceberg Meetup, reach out to me. There's a Luma calendar, and I'm happy to help you to organize the meetup.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show today. I really enjoyed that conversation.
Thank you, here. Bye-bye.
And thank you to everyone at home for listening. We'll be back again with another episode next month, which I'm super excited for. And until then, I shall see you next time.